What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is a special off-season college football episode. I'm Stuckey, and joining me today are my fellow BBOC co-hosts, Colin Wilson and Mike Calabrese, who is celebrating the debut of his new book, which I think a lot of you are going to be excited to read and or gift. Father's Day coming up with 73 days, by the way, to go until college football. But I'm excited to talk about this book and then just talk a little bit about college football and the greatest teams of all time, because the book is Legendary Bowl, Deciding College Football's GOAT. Came out, I believe, last night, officially to the public. Congratulations, Mike. Do you want to tell, before we get to some questions, then start debating this, have a format that we'll go through. But do you want to just tell everyone where and what format they can get the book?
Sure, absolutely. So Legendary Bowl, as you mentioned, came out on Monday night. It is available in paperback, in e-reader, Kindle version, as well as hardcover. You can just go over to Amazon, type in Legendary Bowl, my name, it'll pop up. The book itself was kind of this labor of love, as many people in our audience, the overlap between loving and betting on college football and playing the NCAA 14 video game. You know that it had been sunset, it had been off the shelves for 11 years. And a big reason why I got this project started was that eventually you can just tinker with the rosters. And because the game wasn't basically getting a retread every single year, I was able to build this enormous file where I went through every single team, updated it to the best team in school history. And pretty soon I had 16, 32, 64, 68 teams. And I wanted to throw it all into a blender. I wanted to simulate every single matchup and then see who would actually win. Because this is a debate that we all kind of have from time to time. Whenever there's a Heisman season or an undefeated national champion, you want to start arguing where do they fit in the history of the sport. Unlike the NFL, unlike a lot of professional leagues, this sport goes back over 150 years. So there are a lot of multi-generational arguments. And what I ended up doing in terms of guardrails was I set every single team from 1980 onward. And a big reason for that is that the athleticism, the sophistication of the game, the rule changes, a lot of it can be traced back to the early 80s. That's when we started to see those pass first offenses, when you saw some incredible athletes who still would hold up in today's game. And by putting these 68 teams together, it's also an invitation to debate, your favorite team, your favorite conference across eras. And by the time that I went through the simulation and started reporting, I figured, I think I have a book here. If I put in, a third of the book as a history lesson, which made every single one of these teams special, it was pretty clear to me that it was going to be enticing to any college football fan. When I pitched it to my publisher, Game Changer, they were like, "Oh yes, this is going to do some numbers on Amazon." So I'm really excited that it's live. I'm excited to talk with you guys because going through it, and I'll mention the top 4 seeds in each region. And you can go to my Twitter at East Breeze to see the entire revealed bracket. Every single one is just about undefeated with a national championship and either a number 1 player in the NFL draft or a Heisman level quarterback. So people are very quick to say, "Oh, this team is clearly the best overall." It's not even close. It is incredibly close. Once you start with a sample size as big as the last 45 years, there are incredible teams coast to coast, and I'm fun to get into. It's going to be fun to get into with you guys.
Yeah, I am glad that you cut it off at 1980. Would have been pretty difficult going back. I mean, you have teams like, I think per S&P Plus, the greatest team of all time is 1945 Army, but due to the war, they had a number of advantages. I think they had 2 guys who finished 1-2 in the Heisman that year. 1899 Sewanee University, who went undefeated, shut out, I think, all but one of their opponents. They had a 6-day stretch in 1899 where they played 5 games. They were all SEC teams. They shut them all out. They traveled 2,500 miles via train to play all the games over 6 days. How about 1902 Michigan, who went undefeated, outscored their opponents 644-12? Just would have been impossible to even try and compare. I think that Sewanee team had 18 guys. That was it on the team. So, I think 1980 is a good place to cut it off. Before we dive into the bracket and kind of go through this, couple housekeeping items. We will be back in July for our normal schedule. We'll preview every single conference to get you ready for the season, which is less than 75 days away. We'll have maybe a couple episodes before then, just kind of high level lay of the land just to keep in touch with all of you. And then in the meantime, we will also have College World Series episodes where my cats will be, Colin's hogs will not be. Colin, what's the plan there for episodes?
It says something when you get your credentials approved. So I'm heading up to Omaha, but I'm going to be in the press box celebrating a lot of SEC teams that aren't named Arkansas. So I'm excited to get the College World Series going. We'll have a full write up on it. Calabrese and I are going to cut a pod on it. And then after that, like I feel like I've kind of been holding back on my college football thoughts and what bets I've made and the content that we've put out because the College World Series is kind of taking it. But the second the College World Series is over, I'm just bursting with opinions and feelings and money that I want to get down on college football. So this is a great primer for that. I'm excited to do it. And I'll just say, from the standpoint of cutting teams off in 1980, that was a great decision because was anybody running 5 wide back then? I think everybody was running the wishbone or the I with 3 tight ends and running the triple. Like the number of triple option teams now are compared to back then. I mean, it's not even close. So
Yeah.
excited to get this done.
Yeah, in terms of the
Yeah,
research for the book, Colin, just to comment on it, it took between 5 and 10 hours for me to match the video game file to NCAA 14 and to the real life on field exploits. So the research I went through, in a lot of cases, I wasn't just watching highlights or one game. I was watching 5 to 6 games on YouTube. And when you watch 84 Boston College, Flutie was throwing the ball 35 times a game. He was operating out of shotgun. He was throwing off platform. There was a lot of him improvising, and it looked a little bit like a sawed-off version of Johnny Manziel. Like some of these teams, you can clearly see that they were the pioneers, the innovators, and they caught a lot of stodgy, slower teams off guard. But in the same way, when we get into it with 95 Nebraska, sometimes being different is a good thing. Nobody runs the triple like that anymore. And they had the best athletes, arguably, in college football to do it in that particular season. So it's going to be fun to kind of debate this. But I've done my homework. So I'm always ready for people coming out of the woodwork when they say, oh, this team could never hang. There's a guy on 82 SMU, a defensive tackle, play for the 49ers, who's an NFL All-Pro. He also won a silver at the 84 Olympics in the shot put. These were not mailmen and plumbers and all the arguments that people like to make about the NBA and how, people were scoring all these points because they're playing against guys who couldn't play in today's NBA. Not the case with college football, and certainly not the case with some of these greatest teams.
Yep. All right, before we get into it, how about a quick little fun question, non-football related, that I'll try to do more of this off season. I talked about this with our producer, Matt Mitchell, last night. Was having a conversation this weekend about the strangest thing you've ever eaten. And our producer said a pound of artificial strawberry glaze. It was a dare, which is that's like a pound of plastic. That is horrifying to think about. A pound of fake strawberry. Mine would be, I was down in Aruba and there was a scorpion shot and you had to eat a scorpion and chew it up and then take the shot. I think that was the first thing that came to my mind. Colin, do you have a strangest thing you've ever eaten?
In 2014, Safeco Field started putting out roasted grasshoppers out in the left field bullpen, the visitors bullpen out at the Edgar Martinez Cantina. I went out there and ate as many roasted grasshoppers as I possibly could, mix it in with a Rainier beer. It was actually pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I've had some like dark chocolate crickets, I think, before, which are pretty good. Calabrese, you got an answer here?
Recent one was spicy beef tendon in New York City at this true Chinese Szechuan place, and it like numbed my entire face like I had Novocaine. But all time, probably eating Ethiopian, where you eat some raw meats. Would not recommend. I'm very daring when it comes to ethnic food, but that was a bridge too far for me.
Yeah, but monkey bread, the Ethiopian sponge monkey bread is fire.
Yeah, that part was pretty good. They drew me in with that and kind of lost me on the undercooked to fully raw meats.
Yeah, I went to college in DC, so there were some good Ethiopian spots that I had. But yeah, the raw meats, like I know in Japan there's like some places that do like chicken sashimi now, and you got to eat it like real quick. It's got to be stored perfect, and that's too. I don't think I'd go there. But anyway, let's move on to football. Let's get to this bracket. Again, you can go to @EastBreeze on Twitter, and his pinned tweet is the actual bracket if you want to pull it up and look as we go through this. Calabrese, do you want to go through and just region by region and name the top 4 seeds.
Sure. So I broke it out into directional regions as best I could. But starting in the Midwest, they're playing on their way to the Cotton Bowl. Nebraska in 95 was the 1 seed. Then you had Vince Young's 2005 Texas team. The 3 seed there was 94 Penn State, and the 4 seed was 98 Tennessee. In the South region, playing for the Sugar Bowl, you had 2019 LSU as the 1, 2020 Alabama as the 2, 2018 Clemson as the 3, and Cam Newton's 2010 Auburn team as the 4. In the East region, headed towards the Orange Bowl, you had 2001 Miami, 2013 Florida State, 96 Florida with the old ball coach, and the 4 seed there, 1988 Notre Dame, and then finally playing out west for the Rose Bowl, 2004 USC as the 1, 2021 Georgia as the 2. The 3 seed out there was 1991 Washington, and the 4 seed was the most recent national champion in college football, the 2023 Michigan Wolverines.
All right, let's go through this in first our initial reactions, Colin. Overseeded, underseeded teams. I'll start. I'm going to go overseeded. Well, we'll start with overseeded. I'm going to go with 2017 UCF. I think is overseeded. You got to remember, this is a team. I know they have their claimed national title, but they're a 10 seed in the upper right region, and this is a team that, yeah, they beat Auburn in the bowl game, but who did they play all year? And I mean, even against Memphis, I think in the AAC championship game, I think that game went like double overtime. It was 45-42 or something.
And a game canceled with Maine, right?
Yeah. Game they had another game. Georgia Tech canceled. They had some Hurricane Irma stuff. So yeah, an AAC team. I know they went undefeated. So yeah, I get putting them in here. And for those wondering, you only choose one team for each team. And I'll ask you about some of the potential snubs in a minute, but that's my overseeded team, 2017 UCF. Don't hate that you put them in there, but I mean, I wouldn't even have been mad if they were like in a first 4 game. So I think as a 10, they're overseeded. Sorry, Mackenzie Milton wasn't their quarterback that year, and Scott Frost and all the fans who claimed that national title. Colin, overseeded?
Stealing my thunder because we're coming back to the Collie Matrix national champions later. Overseeded for me, Cincinnati 2021, and you say, what? They're a 12 seed and they made the college football playoff. How in the hell can you say that they are overseeded? They just weren't that good. Look at the other 12 seeds: 99 Wisconsin, 97 North Carolina. I'd have made them 10-point favorites over the Cincinnati team. They would have been able to hang with what those offenses did. The Bearcats non-conference schedule included Miami of Ohio and Murray State. They romped the AAC schedule that year. They only beat Tulsa and Navy by a single possession. Some pretty tough games there. Alabama won by 21 points because Saban took us. Gosh, I feel like I remember Stuckey and I handicapping this game like Saban's going to get a 3-score lead, take his foot off the gas. It's going to look close, and it never was. That's exactly what it was. So I think Cincinnati, even at 12, hey, great defensive backs, right? They're all in the NFL, but besides
they
that,
could play with anybody. But yeah,
right.
I mean,
but I still down. I think 12 is too high.
Quarterback play,
Right.
it just wasn't there with Ritter. So AAC hate out of the gate. Calabrese, any thoughts there?
I mean, they're both half teams. That UCF team, you were correct. They had to beat not only Memphis in double overtime, but the war on I-4, I believe is the nickname between them and USF. That one required that required a late kickoff return for a touchdown. Their offense was electric. I think scoring 34 points against Auburn in a major bowl game showed that that offense worked against anybody with Milton as the trigger man. But defensively, if they got themselves in deep water against Bama that year or Georgia, they weren't getting any stops. They were not getting off the field whatsoever. So I agree with kind of poking holes in their resume to be a truly elite team. But that's what's interesting about this field. There are some teams like 2007 Hawaii, another half team that made the field, but was special offensively. And then when you flip it around for Cincinnati, my issue with that team, reporting and recording the episodes with Ianello about the G5 and how exciting it was that they broke through. They finally get their moment. Their defense was good enough to hang around, and they just didn't take any risks offensively. Their personnel was not good enough to play it vanilla and to play it safe. And I think that's kind of their legacy a little bit with Fickle, which is if they were in this tournament to get an opportunity to beat some of these, tougher teams, they needed to go ahead and go forward on 4th downs when they're in plus territory, be aggressive and, pull out some stops in terms of special trick plays, but they never proved that in the 2021 season. But defensively, I think they could make it low scoring and muck up a bunch of opportunities in this tournament.
All right, let's go to underseeded. I'm going to throw two out there. I'm going to get, we just talked about UCF claiming national title. Two teams that could argue maybe would have won national titles if not for some questionable results. I'm going to start, 1996 Arizona State. Who you have, what seed do you have them at?
I have them in the South region as a 9 seed playing 1982 SMU in the Pony Express in the round of 64.
Yeah, we'll get to our favorite first round matchup. That one I would look forward to. It's not my favorite, but that would be up there. But 1996 Arizona State was maybe a minute away from a national title. They went undefeated, and they were up on Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. I think a top 5 Ohio State team with like a minute to go, and then Ohio State scored and won in the final minute. That team with Jake Plummer, Jake the Snake, they beat Nebraska, I think like 19-0. They shut out Nebraska back-to-back national titles. They were number 1 in the country, had won 26 straight games. The year before, I think they put up like 80 on Arizona State. Arizona State in Tempe shuts them out, run the table, lose to Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. And that team has a special place in my heart because they are the only team in college football Division I history to cover a spread of more than one possession in overtime. They beat USC by 13 in double overtime. They scored a touchdown and then got a scoop and score 6 and won by 13 in overtime. So that team easily could have been a national champion. And then let me throw out one. I know the quarterback play wasn't the greatest with Connor Cook, but 2013 Michigan State, that defense is extremely underrated, and they should have arguably went undefeated. They lost one game to Notre Dame this game was horrendous. There was like 6 PI calls, 4 of them questionable. One at the end of the game, like they led to all Notre Dame's points in that game. A horrendously officiated game that Sparty was robbed of. I think Connor Cook eventually took over as quarterback. They won the rest of their games by double digits. That defense was super underrated. So I think those two teams would be feisty and are a bit underseeded. Colin, what do you got?
Well, I know that we're going to do a snub section, so we might as well get right in it because when the underseeded topic came up, I immediately looked for one team because they never got a fair shake. And I think history is just passing them over. That's going to be 2004 Auburn, the undefeated 2004 Auburn Tigers. Tommy Tuberville never got above number 3 in the polls. You had Jason Campbell at quarterback, Ronnie Brown, Cadillac Williams in the backfield. Again, they went undefeated on an SEC schedule, and they were left out of the BCS national title game because a historic USC team played Oklahoma that season, and Auburn was just simply left out. Still won their bowl game. I believe it was Virginia Tech. They were probably like number 7, somewhere around there. But it's for 2004 Auburn to not get a chance to play for the national title because the way the BCS national championship was set up, which called for a 4-team playoff, was because of this team. I thought maybe there would be an entry in here somewhere. So I'll say underseeded 2004 Auburn for the snub.
Yeah, no, the other Calabrese, first, any comments on Arizona State or Michigan State?
Arizona State, I went back and I watched as many games that were available on YouTube. They were so good and so dynamic. When you look at their backfield with Redmond and Battle and what they were able to do on the offensive line, they had an All-American left tackle as well, protecting Plummer. And then what I really like,
good linebackers on defense, right?
Oh, they had Rogers off the edge, who was an All-American. They had Pat Tillman on that defense as well. They were just solid top to bottom. And it was one of those teams that kind of came out of nowhere. When you look at the buildup, they were slowly getting better in the mid-90s. But afterwards, it wasn't as though this coaching staff went on to great success or was a launching pad for a bunch of assistants. This was just one of those kind of magic in a bottle, lightning in a bottle moments. And the team, as you pointed out, they had the lead in the Rose Bowl with a chance for an undefeated season. You got to remember, 96 Florida won with 1 loss. They got to redeem themselves after losing to Florida State in the regular season finale. They would not have been national champions if Arizona State had gone undefeated with a win over Ohio State there at the end. So yeah. I agree with you. Arizona State is a tremendous team. And when you look at their path a little bit, there's a chance for them to play 2019 LSU in the round of 32. So it gets pretty interesting quickly. And then Michigan State, if we're going to call Cincinnati a half team, I think I could do the same with that Sparty team. Their defense was incredible. They had 3 or 4 pros in their secondary, the only team in the Big Ten in the modern era for their entire secondary to be named to all Big Ten selections, either first, second, or honorable mention. And the one player who was on the honorable mention, I think it was Trey Waynes. He ends up being a first round pick just 2 draft classes later in the NFL. So they were absolutely loaded. They kind of played within themselves. They played conservatively on offense. But yeah, they got hosed in that Notre Dame game. That was one of the ones I went back and watched. I wanted to see, maybe, is this Notre Dame, propaganda? Is this a little bit of hate against them? No, they got screwed in that game. They should have been undefeated. They beat a great Ohio State team. So I think that Michigan State team deserves their flowers.
Yeah, the last one, I think it was Denard. He was just going for the pick. The wide receiver was over top of him, and it was a 3rd and long, and they called PI on the defense. And it was then it went 1st and goal, and they scored. But all the PIs led to points. It was insane. Snub. So Colin brought up 2004 Auburn. So you have to choose between teams. Other teams that jumped out to me. By the way, no Arkansas, Colin. No Arkansas in this bracket.
There's a little next 8 down there. We'll talk about it.
And so I also would say, Colin, this is for you, and I hate to bring this up, but for my Ohio State future in 2014 TCU,
yes,
who did get jobbed. Now they get jobbed again. I think you took 2010 TCU over them, right?
That's correct.
And then 2008 Florida. That team was stacked, and you went with another really good Florida team, but
there's no Tebow. Right, we should say there's no Tebow here. We picked another Florida team.
Yep. Yeah, so no 2008 Florida. So any thoughts on any of those?
I'll start with the last one first. I think it's absolutely a coin flip between 96 and 2008. You got Heisman winning quarterbacks who were incredibly religious and pious, check on both sides. You have Hall of Fame coaches, Urban Meyer, Steve Spurrier. You have really salty defenses. I mean, Florida had so much depth in 96 that they were filtering in as a situational pass rusher. The freak, Javon Curse. When you look at what they had offensively, the advantage clearly for the 96 team is their receiving core. Having Ike Hilliard and Rydell Anthony and Jaquiz Green, that is a lot better than just the Percy Harvin show. Now, obviously, Percy Harvin was used like a queen on the chessboard. Urban Meyer moved him all over the place, set up mismatches wherever he could, whether he was running out of the backfield, slot, out wide. It was very close for me. But the difference is, as I mentioned before, they lose to a really stacked Florida State team on the road in a 3-point game at the end of the season, whereas the 2008 team loses to an Ole Miss team that was fine.
Miss, right?
Yeah, losing at home, that was the game that launched the famous speech from Tebow. If I'm, needing to come up with a tiebreaker, that was it for me in that situation. The 2010-2014 TCU conversation, it's super close. That TCU team in 2010 also has Andy Dalton, who I think, because of his NFL career, despite starting over 100 games and going to the playoffs, he was always kind of a game manager, a B plus player. He was a back-to-back Mountain West Player of the Year, and he was somebody who really handled the pressure and the big moments really well. And going to the Rose Bowl and winning the way that they did, and their defense playing the way they did, and also neutralizing a guy like J.J. Watt, I think that proved that they were ready. They were beyond just a BCS buster. They finished that year number 2. Whereas the 2014 team, I still can't get out of my mind giving up 61 points to a rival with a chance to win the Big 12 title. I understand that they got snubbed. They have every right to feel that way. They go into I believe it was the Peach Bowl, and just beat the brakes off of Ole Miss. When you lose and you give up 61 points, that's a pretty glaring weakness to me. So once again, another coin flip situation, but I went with the perfect version of the 2010 Gary Patterson squad.
And then how difficult was Auburn?
Auburn, for me, it's a hard conversation because their 2 best players in 2010 were so transcendent in Cam Newton and Nick Fairley. But the rest of the roster, it's just check marks across the board for the 2004 version. They were built in more of the traditional SEC mindset, which is they were good everywhere. They were deep everywhere. They didn't have these flaws. They had the running game to lean on. And Jason Campbell was, basically an A- college quarterback. He's somebody who made it into the pros and was a serviceable starter for a while. So it's not like he was some tin can. But at the end of the day, when you look at how both Fairley and Newton took over games, like they don't win the national title unless Fairley goes berserk and blows up the interior running game for Oregon, in the same way that Cam bailed them out earlier in the season when he went full Superman on, a lot of the defenses that they face. So there's going to be Auburn fans who are going to be mad about it. There's Auburn fans who are going to stomp and gnash their teeth and say that if they got a chance, they would have beat 2004 USC. I don't think that they would have. And I think that's kind of the differentiator for me at the very end of it. Whereas Auburn got better as the season went on, they were also able to handle close games, which I think is interesting. In some of these cases, we talk about like 2013 Florida State, they were running away from teams right up until the national title game. So that was the first time that they needed to play from behind and really had adversity. That Auburn team faced it multiple times, coming back in the Cam back Iron Bowl situation, as well as what they needed to do in crunch time against the Ducks. So I feel comfortable going with 2010 over 2004.
All right, let's move on to the toughest region. I'm going to say, I think for me, it is I'm going to call it like the SEC, because you have 2019 LSU is your 1 seed. Your 2 seed is 2020 Alabama, who you could argue could be a 1 seed. Now they don't get as much credit because it was a COVID year, but because of that, their schedule was all SEC teams. Their average margin of victory was 29. That team was dominant.
No bye weeks either.
Yep, no bye weeks. And I mean, you got to remember that 2020 Bama team, which was better than 2019. That 2019 Bama team almost beat LSU, if you recall, the year before. Then, because of this 2019 LSU and the love that they get, and deservedly so for Joe Burrow and that offense, which was historically great, the 2018 Clemson team was, I think, one of the most underrated champions of the past 20 years, because they get overshadowed by 19 LSU. And then, to some extent, Alabama. And that year, Alabama was considered the best team all year. And then Clemson went out, beat them in the national title. And then, you have your 4 seed. You get another SEC team in there in 2010 Alabama. The 2000 Oklahoma, they don't get talked about enough. Really good staff. And I think they beat like 5 top 10 teams, maybe top 11, and then a 6 top 20 team. That team is super underrated. Talked about that Arizona State team is a 9. You have the Pony Express is an 8. But the top of that region, like, I could argue, I think you did a good job with the 1 seeds. Like, you have to put 2001 Miami, which we'll get to, 95 Nebraska. But I wouldn't, like, if you had like 2020 Alabama or 2018 Clemson as as 1 seed above or as 1 seed, I wouldn't think it was obnoxious. So I think that's the toughest region. Colin, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a toss-up between 2 of them, and I think you named the one that I like the most, but I will throw a shout-out to the Rose Bowl bracket, because the defenses are insane. We're talking 21 Georgia, 23 Michigan. We've already talked about the 2013 Michigan State is in there, the 91 Washington team from a defensive perspective. The Rose Bowl bracket is ridiculously loaded with defenses, which is what you need for the number 1 seed in there. But the Sugar Bowl, like you mentioned, by far the toughest bracket in here. When you look at the offenses, it's not the defenses that makes this one, because Clemson's 18 defense potentially has an argument to be made to be the best ever. But the offenses in this bracket are absolutely insane. The 14 seed is 2007 Hawaii Colt Brennan offense that made the Sugar Bowl. The 3 seed is Clemson 2018, who we just mentioned for the defense. They had Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, who I think Etienne might be the best player that's ever not played quarterback in college football. The 10 seed is 1994 Colorado with Slash Cordell Stewart and Rashawn Salam. And the 8 seed is the Pony Express of Eric Dickerson and Craig James. The offense in this bracket is absolutely insane. I would watch, stream, I would pay to see all of these teams go up against each other in this bracket.
Yep. And you have Marshawn Lynch, Aaron Rodgers. Do we even mention them as they're the 7th seed?
Marshawn, I mean, this is kind of a Miami Hurricane situation. Marshawn wasn't even the starter. He was basically spelling JJ Arrington, who ran for 2,000 yards. So that offense also just incredible. I'm glad that you guys are touching on Clemson, because for some reason, for a team that played just 6 years ago, maybe it's the Dabo hate, maybe it's people melding the teams together, them getting fed into the wood chipper in 2019 by LSU, that, oh, maybe they weren't as good. The 2018 version was super special because of their defensive line. The Power Rangers, they called themselves. They basically had top draft picks up and down that D line. And that allowed them to play so many exotic coverages, drop people, and use Isaiah Simmons all over the field as a linebacker, as a nickel, as a safety. So I'm glad that you brought them up, because when I was setting up this tournament, once it was locked in, the seeds and everything, it was like, if they come out of this region, I'm not going to blink. And I think that they could beat just about anyone and also have the versatility because of that D line to stop a running offense or a passing offense. And that's not necessarily true, even in some of the elite defenses in this field.
Yep. Let's go to who we think a 1 or 2 seed that we think is most likely to have an early exit. Now, Calabrese won't spoil anything, but simulating this, we'll know it's fixed if he has 2007 Missouri with what was that, Chase Daniel, advancing past Nebraska or winning the first round matchup, then beating Nebraska as a Missouri guy. But I'm going to say my 1 or 2 that I think could get upset early. I'm going to go with USC. That team was incredibly fun to watch. But who do you got to play? You're playing an option team first. Just going to grind the game down, slow the possessions. Keenan Reynolds and that 2015 Navy team, I love them. And then you got potentially the magic of Boise State, that 2010 Boise State team in the second round if they beat Stanford in a really good 8-9 game. So I'll throw out USC, just some tricky potential teams in the first and second round.
Yeah, I'm gonna go up to the Orange Bowl. I'm gonna say the 2001 Miami, Florida team. They're number 1 seeded. Apologies to you, Stuck, because I know this isn't gonna sound well, but because Ed Reed is on this defense, and the narrative, the narrative is against Miami. So I think I'll probably get some blowback here. But the Hurricanes, all of our top seeds dominated their entire schedule, and the Hurricanes did not, especially when they went on the road. When you look at what Miami does these days, when they go and play the Pinstripe Bowl and they go up north, it's always a problem. It's been a problem forever. Game 3, they allowed Pitt to score 21 points. This is, game up north. Game 5, Florida State scored 27. And in game 11, they nearly lost to Vautech in Lane Stadium. They won 26-24. So there were a lot of areas. Like if you look at these other number 1 seeds, there's really no question they were going to win some of their games. Miami had some close ones, but you look at their bracket, you're going to take on Johnny Manziel in the second round at Mitchie Stadium, like up in cold weather potentially. Like, are we going to get a weather report here? We're going to send the Hurricanes up north. And then after that, 88 Notre Dame is here. We have Tony Rice and Ricky Waters and Rocket Ishmael, an undefeated national title team in Notre Dame awaiting in the round of 16. I just don't think a team like Miami of 2001 can make it through all this.
The pros on Miami, maybe the quarterback play could have been better, but just the amount of pros and depth that Miami had. Another team that I'll mention that fits that bill, besides some of the recent SEC teams, but 2013 Florida State, which I believe every starter and their kicker and punter started an NFL game. They scored 709 points, which was only 6 fewer than the 2019 LSU team, which many regard as one of the best offenses of all time. And they had 1 fewer game. And it's even more impressive when you consider it's a Jimbo Fisher team. They don't play at a fast pace, playing pretty slow pace. So that team was loaded with pro talent. Calabrese, I'm curious to see who would you nominate?
I may have to double check my notes, but I believe the 2013 Florida State team beat FBS opponents by 42 points per game. That is obscene, like beyond belief, to be able to drop that many 50, 60 point bombs on people. I like that you guys picked both USC and Miami, and it's for very similar reasons. When you go back, I think sometimes we sugarcoat it. We have the rose-colored glasses on, and we figure that, it's that offense, it's Leinart, it's Bush, it's 2 Heisman winners. Eventually, they just crushed everybody. They needed a 4th down stand in their own red zone against Aaron Rodgers in the Coliseum to win 23-17. That was a little bit more of their identity at that point. Pete Carroll was a defensive coach. That was a much better version of their defense in 04 than it was in 05. But also later in the season, they needed a late interception to stave off a comeback attempt from UCLA, who was nothing to write home about that particular year. Then obviously they go to the Orange Bowl and just dog walk Oklahoma. And I think that's the lasting memory. So for them to get into a close game with either a Jim Harbaugh coach Stanford team with Andrew Luck as their quarterback, or as you mentioned, that Michigan team from 2023, I don't think that would be unreasonable at all. And then Miami, it is true that they were playing a little bit more conservatively than they should have offensively. They had Andre Johnson. They had Jeremy Shockey. They had that running back room that was Portis and Gore and McGahee. They should have been opening it up and playing fast, but they didn't. They wanted to play slower. And one tidbit from the book, if they had scored 0 offensive touchdowns the entire season, they still would have gone 8-4. That's how many special teams, defensive touchdowns, safeties, blocked field goals, return for touchdowns. That's how many they scored that year. So they always seem to find a way. So if I was going between the two, I think I'd lean 2004 USC.
Yeah, you had that Ed Reed pick against in that BC game when he ripped the ball away. Just another one of the awesome Ed Reed plays in his legacy. Let's go to favorite first round matchup. For me, this was easy. I'm going 6-11, 07 West Virginia against who potentially would have had a chance to play for a national title if they didn't lose that game to. They think they were number 2 in the country. And they lost. And West Virginia fans don't want to hear this, but they lost to Pitt. I think it was the 100th edition of the Backyard Brawl. I think they lost that game like it was ugly. What was the score of that game?
13-9. Pat White got hurt. Yeah, Pat White got hurt. Brown came in as their backup. Pat McAfee missed a couple chippy field goals. It was basically a perfect storm. And then Rich Rod left, I want to say 17 days later for his next job. So the whole history of West Virginia football and potentially the Big East could have been different if he doesn't get hurt in that game and they win and go on, because they probably would have won the national title in 07. That's how good they were offensively.
Yeah, Pat White, Slayton. But that offense was so fun. The Rich Rod spread taking on 08 Texas Tech and the GOAT, Mike Leach, RIP, and his air raid with Graham Harrell, Crabtree, and company. That total would be sky high. I also want to know the total LSU 2019 LSU versus 2020 Coastal Carolina. What's that total?
But Coastal slower than Coastal slower.
Yeah, Coastal is slow, but LSU's scoring 80.
And LSU's one weakness on defense, they couldn't stop the run. John Rice Plumlee and the Rebs ran for 400 yards against them. So who knows in that game?
Yeah, Coastal will put up points. But that West Virginia, Pat White led Rich Rod offense versus Texas Tech in the Leach air raid, that game would be super fun. Colin, how about you?
This is a very personal game for me. I'll try to get through it here. When in the beginning of 2018, when Stuckey and I started working with our 5-star blue chip producer, Matt Mitchell, we had to come up with some music. We had to come up with some audio drops for the intro to this podcast. I said, I only have one demand. I think it's the only demand I've ever made in my Action Network career. And that is you were going to go get Clint Sterner's Fumble and Stumble, and you're going to put it in this drop. And it is fantastic. So I'm going to go with Cotton Bowl bracket, number 4, 1998 Tennessee taking on number 13, 2015 Houston. Now, Tennessee won the national title in 1998 with T. Martin a year after Peyton Manning went to the NFL. But the critical junction of that Tennessee season wasn't the national title or winning the SEC. It was 8-0 against Arkansas, who was also 8-0 in Neyland. The Razorbacks held off Peerless Price, Travis Henry. They were beating the Bulls 24-22 with just a couple minutes left in the game. Under 2 minutes, Sterner stumbles, fumbles, Travis Henry TD with 28 seconds left. At some point as a college football fan, for everybody out there, the sport has found a way to put its teeth into your veins and make you bleed and love it and feel amazing highs and amazing lows. I went through all of that in a span of 10 minutes as a 20-year-old. I was hooked on this sport for the rest of my life because of Tennessee, Arkansas in 1998. So I would be happy to watch this game where Greg Ward Jr. as a 13 seed takes the field. He totaled 17 touchdowns through the air, 21 on the ground for the Cougars. They beat 7 ranked teams that season, including Florida State in the Peach Bowl. I would love to see 2015 Houston upset 1998 Tennessee, who is the nemesis of my life.
Love it. I hope we insert that clip in there. How about before we get to what we think is going to happen and how this plays out, we'll do our final 4. Well, let's do 2 things. Number 1, let's do a Cinderella pick. I don't know what kind of seed you're looking for here, but a team that I think could make a run that's not like I'll say a top 4 seed. But feel free to go wherever you want with this, Colin. But I'm going to say 1980 Pitt. Hail to Pitt. This is a team, every single starter on the offensive and defensive lines played in the NFL. I think they started in the NFL. They had 3 D-backs who started in the NFL. Dan Marino is the quarterback. That's a team, 4 Hall of Famers, NFL Hall of Famers on that team, I believe. That's a team that with the quarterback play, Marino, they're playing the trenches. I think they can hold up being from 1980, and they could be dangerous. Colin, how about you, Cinderella?
Well, we've already mentioned the team, and sadly, I was going to make this section sort of would you buy this team? And that is, this team is in the Orange Bowl bracket. They have claimed a national championship with McKenzie Milton at quarterback and Shaquille Griffin at linebacker. Undefeated season, almost all blowouts, 4 wins by a single touchdown. And amazingly enough, their coach, Scott Frost, beat their current coach, Gus Malzahn, who's their coach. So the reason I said that they could be a Cinderella team is because I believe we bet against them every single week, and they beat us every single week. 2017 Central Florida is the most frustrating team I've ever tried to handicap in my entire life. Soft schedule, Hurricanes knocking things out, a gimmicky offense, and they never lost. And it infuriated me more than anything. And I would think a win, 2 wins, a little Sweet 16 berth here. Let's just continue the hate that I have for the UCF 2017 calling Matrix national champions.
All right, then how about a team that is just has you have a soft spot for, that you kind of were happy to see them in here. You have some good memories on it. I'll start. I'll bring up 2012 NIU, who got to play in a BCS game. So they won the MAC championship, and they ended up in the top, I think you had to be in like the top 16, and they ended up playing a BCS game. They should have went undefeated in the regular season. This is a Jordan Lynch team. Their one loss was against Iowa, and ladies and gentlemen, some things never change. So in 2012, I think this is in Soldier Field, Northern Illinois started the season against Iowa. They lost 18-17. Let me tell you how this game went. This is every Iowa game ever. NIU was up 17-12 late in the game. And Iowa, by the way, Iowa's stat line this game, they handed it to Bullock 30 times for 150 yards. Their quarterback, James Vandenberg, he threw it 33 times for 129 yards. But the reason that NIU lost is Iowa punted late in the 4th quarter, shocker. And it was down at the 1. Again, another shocker. And then Northern Illinois had a punt. It's a MAC team punting. And then Iowa got the start at like the 20-yard line after the punt. And then they ended up scoring on a run on 3rd and 9. The most Iowa game ever. And then they won by 1, which was NIU's only loss. Now NIU can't make a run in this. They're a MAC team. But everyone knows my love for the MAC and Jordan Lynch. And that Nebraska team, Frazier, Phillips, Green, that'd be some old school football playing that Northern Illinois team. By the way, Northern Illinois in that game, Jordan Lynch finished 6 of 16 for 50 yards throwing the ball. And he obviously ran for over 100 as he usually did. So I'm glad that there was a MAC team in here who will be a first round exit.
Yeah, for a soft spot for me, I'll go with 2007 Kansas. They are seeded 11th in the Cotton Bowl bracket. I think when you think of Kansas football now, you're thinking of Jalen Daniels, you're thinking of Bean, you're thinking of some crazy motion, explosive plays, you're thinking of Lance Leipold. And, even before he was there, it was just an all offensive team and 0 defense. They've been 0 defense forever. But that 2007 team, I might be wrong about this, but I think they were number 1 in total defense. I mean, they were way up there making the Orange Bowl. And I thought they were frauds. They lost to Missouri. Actually, they got whipped by Missouri. They had 21 4th quarter points to make it look like that game was close. But besides that game, they won the rest of the schedule, even winning the Orange Bowl against Virginia Tech. That 2007 Kansas team was the best team they'd had in decades. And boy, I heard a lot of it. I heard a lot of chatter from Kansas alums, but we have not seen defense at Kansas like that since 2007.
Cowboys, do you have a soft spot for any one specific team?
Absolutely. 2007 Hawaii, half of their kickoffs came at midnight or later Eastern. They were always the break glass in case of emergency gambling team. If you're having a rough Saturday, you just loaded it up on a Rainbows over. Colt Brennan running the run and shoot of June Jones to absolute perfection. And there was that energy the whole year. If everything goes right, they can go to a BCS bowl. and they had to pull it out of the fire multiple times, including their regular season finale against the Washington Huskies. I believe they're down 21-0 on their home field, came back and won. They had a classic on the mainland against San Jose State that they won in overtime. So many incredible moments from that season. And like I said, sometimes these bowl games, for better or worse, can color people's perception of them. They got crushed by a Georgia team that was bloodthirsty in that Sugar Bowl, but the rest of their season was magical. And I think it meant so much, clearly, to the community, to the whole state of Hawaii, and really to all the BCS busters, the G5 teams that would come after them. So that was probably my favorite team. But yeah, they are lambs to the slaughter here in the first round against 2018 Clemson.
All right, before we get out of here, let's go bracket by bracket, Colin, and we'll go region by region, I should say, and we'll say how we think it's going to play out, and then at the end we'll give our champion. We'll start in the Cotton Bowl region. 95 Nebraska is the 1 seed. 05 Texas, who was also loaded and played one of the most memorable college football games of my lifetime, is the 2 seed. By the way, we haven't even mentioned Penn State. That 94 Penn State team, who was that the team that got jobbed? Not playing the national title? Right?
They should have absolutely split the national title. They went undefeated. They went to the Rose Bowl, beat up on the Ducks, but that was the first time that Tom Osborne could get a national championship. So both polls ended up voting for him. They had multiple Heisman
Kerry
finalists,
Collins, right?
Kerry Collins and Kajana Carter. They also
Carter.
had Kyle Brady at tight end. Bobby Ingram won the very first Blitnikoff Award. Defensively, they were a little bit more in the middle of the pack, but they still had some really good guys like Kim Herring in the secondary. Their offensive line was loaded. So yeah, that team in particular was by far Joe Pa's best offensive team. They were the opposite of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They dropped bombs on people that entire season, and they had a clutch moment playing against Simeon Rice and Hardy in that Illinois defense that was, I believe, at the time ranked number 1 in the whole country. 97-yard game-winning drive to come back. So that was showing they were both really talented and super clutch when they needed to be.
Yeah, narrative game. A good narrative game would be 94 Penn State versus 95 Nebraska. But I'm gonna stick with my upset pick. I'm kind of all chalk here, so I'm going 1980 Pitt and Dan Marino coming out of the Cotton Bowl region and making it to the semis. Colin, how do you see it playing out?
Nobody. Listen, if you're a Gen Zer or maybe a millennial that just caught on to college football, that you haven't seen anything like what that 1995 Nebraska offense was running. Running the triple out of the eye was you needed more than a week to prepare. I mean, this is worse than some of the Army and Navy stuff that we see these days. What Nebraska was doing back then, the drills, the decades of work that they put into this offensive system, the kind of recruits that they were looking for. Tommy Frazier at quarterback, Lawrence Phillips and Amon Green running the triple out of the eye was the most intimidating thing I've seen on film. If you have not seen this, go to YouTube and watch it. It is a joy.
They would crush teams too. And
yes,
I believe their offensive line didn't allow a sack or get a holding call the entire season.
I believe it was one holding call the entire year, which is wild running that often.
I will save talking about the defense till we get to the Final Four, but the offense, this just is beauty, poetry.
Yeah, can't go wrong with 95 Nebraska. All right, moving on to the Sugar Bowl region. This is the one that I said is the toughest by far. 96 Arizona State was my team that I said was underseeded and they're feisty, but I do think LSU would make it to the quarters with that offense. But I'm going to take, 20 Bama versus 18 Clemson, I think would be an absolute war. But I'm going to take maybe a small upset again, but I'm going with 2018 Clemson. And I think that they would beat 2019 LSU. I was wrong on LSU plenty until the national title. So LSU would probably win and cost me money if that game happened. But I think the difference would be Clemson's defense in that game. Get a few more stops. So I'm going 18 Clemson coming out and going to the Final Four. And spoiler, I have them beating Pitt. So I have them in the national title. Colin, you?
Yeah, same thing. I'm on 2018 Clemson, and everybody should know from this podcast that I believe I was trying to invite Trevor Lawrence over to my house for dinner every night. Like, I had so much money on 2018 Clemson that year. It made handicapping pretty easy. I think Travis Etienne was a cheat code. I would love to see him in the NCAA football video game. I'm sad that that 10-year gap missed him from a defensive perspective. I mean, you're talking Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence on that defensive interior. What's the one thing in 2024 that everybody wanted out of the transfer portal for college football this year? Defensive interior. They are not around. You have that, you're usually the winner. That is the difference from breaking through the offensive line of LSU, which had problems a lot of the year. All those dumps off to Clyde Edwards-Helaire that Joe Burrow would put in, Clemson would be on top of that. The Alabama offensive line, same thing with getting to Mac Jones. You're not going to be able to run. You're going to have to be, slants all day, and then you're going to have to deal with some of the guys that they had in the secondary. The Isaiah Simmons, where was he going to line up? I would love to see LSU's offense and Alabama's offense try to figure out where Isaiah Simmons was along with this defensive line. So I think Clemson was the most complete team out of this bracket.
All right, and then the Orange Bowl, mine's simple. It's I'm rolling with the U and all that pro talent. And mainly Ed Reed would just find a way. I'm biased though. Colin, you having UCF come out of this region?
Out of the Orange, I think there's plenty of upsets here. Do what?
You better not have UCF coming out of this.
No, there's plenty of upsets here, but I went with the 2-seeded Florida State 2013. Jameis Winston was absolutely out of control with explosive plays. Same thing in the NFL. Huge arm, just a hose for an arm. Accuracy didn't matter in Florida State, but it does in the NFL. But no, I had Florida State.
Yeah, I think there would be some chaos in this bracket, but I do think it would be Miami versus Florida State. If I wasn't biased, I probably would pick Florida State. All right. Rose Bowl region, final region. Maybe this is some recency bias, but just how complete, deep, and dominant they are. I'm going with the 2-seed, Georgia. 2021 Georgia.
This was tough for me because I believe 2021 Georgia is greater than 2023 Michigan. That national title team that we just saw, I think the 21 version of Georgia that beat them up in the semifinals would have beat them up again. So you pair them up with a USC team that was just historically good on offense. I went the other way. I went with USC because of the invention of the Bush push, which I think technically came next year at Notre Dame, but because of the invention of the Bush push, which the Philadelphia Eagles and the usage of it in the NFL, like they're going to have to make a rule for it because it started with him and then it took some sort of 15-year gap before we saw it again. I'm going to go with the Trojans here in the Bush push to win.
All right. So now we have, Colin, your final four is USC, Florida State, Clemson, and Nebraska. I'll start with you. How's it playing out and who's winning it all?
Nebraska is winning it all over Florida State. The defensive line that they had from the Peter brothers, I mean, they were absolutely out of control. We're looking at Jason Peter, Christian Peter, and Grant Wistrom, who might be the best defensive edge out there. I don't know if you guys want to name another, but probably the best defensive edge in this entire field. They would absolutely dominate the offensive line, no matter which one that they would face. I would have them over Florida State in the finals, beating Clemson in the semis and beating Florida State in the finals, which I think would be an easier game than beating 2018 Clemson in the semifinals.
No shocker here. I have Miami winning it all over 2018 Clemson. I believe Bill James has a metric for measuring past historical college football teams, this like Pythagorean win percentage. And I think, for example, I think LSU was at like 86%, that 19 LSU team. And Miami, which I think is the highest ever, was at like 97.5. So there's some numbers that back it up. I don't even have to go into all the pro talent. So I'm going Miami over Clemson.
Now, you didn't have it in your bracket, and I had it in mine. What would you do with my champion, 95 Nebraska, facing off against your Miami team? With that offense running the triple out of the eye against that defense of the Hurricanes.
I'd have Miami winning, but it'd be close. That Nebraska team, it was damn good and damn dominant. I had to come up with one. I didn't want to be all chalk, so that's why I picked the 1980 pick. Cowboys, any thoughts on our Final Fours and champions?
I really like the teams that you picked, not being super chalky. I agree with Nebraska in terms of not only what they accomplished on offense, which was the answer to the question, what if you ran the option, which is a great equalizer with the best athletes available to you and just an ironclad offensive line that moved everybody. But the other part of it is what they did on defense, because a lot of pushback is, oh, it's a team in the 90s, and they think of Nebraska as this slow, stodgy power football team. That's what they were in the 80s. But reading interviews with Tom Osborne, he took all of his recruiting cues from Jimmy Johnson. He was like, I want a defense that looks like the Miami Hurricanes in the 80s. And it took him a long time to get there. But by the mid 90s, he had enough speed at the second and third levels of his defense to be able to compete. And going up against the fun gun, Steve Spurrier's offense in 1995, they were harassing Danny Werfel that entire game. Receivers were catching passes, but they weren't getting yards after reception because the defense was so fast in the secondary. So I think that's what makes them compelling to beat any team in this field all the way up to modern offenses like 2019 LSU. And the last thing I'll say, a team that before I simulated it that I didn't think truly got their flowers that we haven't touched on, 91 Washington. That defense was so physical and so fast. They were absolutely intimidating to the point of being able to stop the run, much like 2021 Georgia, but also having enough athletes in their secondary. Offensively, that's the part that will be interesting when you read the book because they had Billy Joe Hobart, who was a fine starting quarterback. He played in the NFL. They also had Mark Brunell coming off the bench because he was recovering from injury, but by the second half of the season, he was ready to go. So they had the trigger men, and they had Mario Bailey at 5'7", who was an All-American at wide receiver. So don't sleep on the Huskies. And please, when you go through the book, I think to me, the fun part is the deep dives on all the teams. If you're unfamiliar with them, please check it out.
Yeah, fantastic read. I hope everyone grabs it and share your thoughts with us on Twitter. These are always fun things to debate. One final question for Colin. Colin, what are your thoughts on Mike putting in an 8-4 2000 Purdue team over the 11-2 2011 Arkansas Razorbacks?
That Arkansas team was absolute fire. This was the hottest version of a Bobby Petrino offense. Now, Ryan Mallett wasn't there. He had taken off for the NFL, and Tyler Wilson ran that offense perfectly. Boobie Nile was still there. This is a team that just came off a Sugar Bowl loss to Ohio State. They would have beat 2000 Purdue. They would have smoked them before Bobby Petrino would have taken his next motorcycle ride down the pig trail after here in Arkansas.
Mike,
that Purdue team produced more pros than any Purdue team ever, including the Mackey Award winner. They had Drew Brees at quarterback. But to put a finer point on the selection process, I now feel bad for the selection committee because of how difficult it can be. But essentially, those at-large teams, the teams that were on the bubble, were more in that 11 seed line for me. And I was trying to add in a little bit of variety. Some of these G5 teams, some of these teams that maybe had one transcendent player like Drew Brees, but there were playing games. Nevada with Colin Kaepernick playing against 07 Kansas. So there's lots of opportunities to kind of see how these teams would have matched up against one another. And you mentioned it, Colin. I did put in the bubble, the next team, eight teams out. 2011 Arkansas was on there, 2019 Minnesota, 2015 Western Michigan rowing the boat there with PJ Fleck, 03 Miami with Ben Roethlisberger, 01 Fresno, one of the original teams. They landed on the cover of Sports Illustrated with David Carr, 95 Northwestern with Fitzgerald at linebacker, 84 UNLV with Randall Cunningham playing double duty, playing quarterback and punter, and then finally 83 Illinois. So there was lots of teams to consider, and I'm happy to get into it with people on social because these arguments and resumes were really close across the board.
Yeah, that 2000 Purdue team, they did lose some close games, but they also got smoked by Jeff Smoker in Michigan State, I think, one of those weeks. Anyway, all right, good stuff.
Was Randall Cunningham your favorite player growing up? I mean, a dual quarterback punter. I mean, this is right up the Stuckey alley here.
He was. I was a little too young to really be into college football when he was at UNLV, but he would have. Yeah. Cannot wait to already break down some of these teams when we do our conference previews, including plenty of punter talk. June 1st is when I really start diving in, so I'm hard at work while Colin and I are breaking down all these teams. Mike has been breaking down the 2011 Oklahoma State Cowboys and other teams. So make sure you go check out that book. But we'll all be ready to roll for our conference previews. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Colin and Mike for joining me. And one more plug for Mike's excellent book, Legendary Bowl: Deciding College Football's GOAT. Check it out on Amazon. That'll do it for us. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Thanks to our producer, Matt Mitchell, on the back end. Make sure you subscribe. Tell a friend, tell an enemy. Leave a 5-star review. I'll start to do a bunch of giveaways. They really help us out. Doesn't matter what you say. Just leave us a 5-star review. Really help us, especially in the summer. If you've already done it on your phone, just grab your brother's, girlfriend's, whoever's phone, and leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for tuning in again, and we will see you shortly. Cheers.
Peace out.